I'm Mr. B, and today we have a 2018 Volkswagen Atlas, and we are going to do an oil change on it. Now, this engine is pretty common to Volkswagen. It's the 2-liter TFSI engine. We can pretty much find this engine in our GLIs, GTIs, all the way down to our Passats, Tiguan's, even some of the Audis have this engine, so it's pretty common. I also do a couple of other videos on this engine in different cars, but I thought it would be nice to do one especially for the Atlas. So this Atlas has right at 50,000 miles on it, a little less than 50,000 miles. So we're going to do a full oil change on it. Now, the recommended oil change on this vehicle is every 10,000 miles. Some people change the oil sooner, but I do not recommend going any further than the 10,000 mile factory recommended maintenance. So I'm going to show you what you're going to need to do this oil change, and also I'm going to show you the oil and the filter that I recommend. And the oil and the filter I recommend are very important on this vehicle, especially if you're pushing it to that 10,000 mile range of change. So always remember, when we're doing our oil changes after we're done, we need to routinely check our oil and make sure that we're not consuming any oil. And remember that Volkswagen specification for oil consumption is 1 quart every 1,000 miles. So if we go 10,000 miles on an oil change and we don't check our oil, we can actually use up to 10 quarts of oil. And of course, this car doesn't hold that much, so that's going to be a problem. So always, I recommend every tank of gas or two to check your oil, along with your tire pressure and anything for leaking, coolant, all your fluids and things like that. So it's very important to remember that these cars get very expensive when they break, so we need to make sure that we're checking the fluids and the tire pressure and everything along as we go as owners. So let me go ahead and get this thing racked up, and I'll show you what you need for your oil change. Okay, so here are the supplies that you are going to need. We have a 5-liter bottle of Liqui Moly 5W40 motor oil. This is the Leash Loft High Tech, and we have a 1-liter bottle. This is going to give you a little bit more than what you need to change the oil. So the manufacturer specified quantity here is either 5.7 liters or 6 quarts of oil, okay? Now, there is a TSB on the oil quality on these vehicles, and it is S2012855, and that's going to discuss the standards, which is Volkswagen 50200. This oil meets the standards, and I think it exceeds the standards. Now, Volkswagen does recommend Castrol Edge Professional. That's what they use in all the dealerships, but again, I like this oil better. I think it performs better at the 10,000 mile range, so definitely use this oil if you're going up to 10,000 miles. So, as always, I always recommend a man filter here. This is HU6002Z, and this oil filter will have everything you need inside your cartridge here and your O-ring for your cartridge cover. So right here, this is good stuff. It is a little bit more expensive. It's actually about the same price as the Castrol Edge they require you to use, but I think under $35, $40 or so is about the range of what I get this stuff on Amazon. So I always recommend to use this type of oil. It is the best oil for these engines. So let's go ahead and get the car racked up, and I'm going to show you underneath the hood what we're going to have to do before we drain the oil. Okay, so we have the hood popped here, and first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get this engine cover off. It just pulls straight up, okay? And we're just going to lay this out of the way. And I'm just checking and making sure there's nothing crazy going on. I'm also checking my fluids. So you want to check your coolant. Of course, make sure that when you check the coolant that the coolant has cooled down. You never want to open that while it's hot. Checking my brake fluid. My brake fluid is low. I want to check my brake pads and make sure that they're not too worn, because if low fluid is a good indication of brake pads being low. I want to go ahead and fill the washer fluid up with proper washer fluid. You want to make sure you're not using just straight water in there, because that can cause an issue in the wintertime. And check your filter if you want to, if it's time. I recommend checking that about every 20 or 30,000 miles. So I want to check that and make sure that it's okay. It's only Torx bits to hold this thing in. But what we're really after here is our oil filter. Our oil filter's down here. It has a plastic cover. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and pull this out before we drain the oil. And the reason why is there's a check valve in here that when we release the pressure on this, all the old oil out of here will drain into the oil pan. And when we change the oil, we want to get all the old oil out. So we're going to go ahead and take this off. So I think this is either a 30 or 32 millimeter, but it's 1.25 inches if you have a standard. And I normally just take a 1/2 inch socket here and a ratchet, and it's not on very hard. Just want to turn it and it'll come out like so. Make sure that you have, I'll put this right here so I'm not dripping oil everywhere. And I'll pull this out and kind of let it drain. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this right here. And we're going to take this away. So we'll put the oil filter on last. Okay, so let me go ahead and get this car up in the air, and I'm going to show you what we're going to have to do to it underneath. Okay, so we have to get this belly pan off right here, and you'll see some Torx 25s, T25s around here. And this one's actually missing a few, but they're just, I just grab a 1/4 inch right here, zip them out. Ain't nothing to it. Once you get these out, they will, you know, this pan's not heavy, it's plastic. May even be missing on your car, just depending on. Once we get this out of the way, then we'll get to our oil pan. We can take our plug down and get the oil draining. While I'm under here, I'm checking for any leaks. That just comes down like that. Making sure there's no rocks or anything in that pan. And looking to make sure nothing's leaking. This one looks pretty dry, so we're gonna go ahead. This is our plug here. We're gonna go ahead and take that out and let the oil drain. Okay, so the drain plug is a 19 millimeter. Should come out fairly easy. Just remember, this is an aluminum oil pan, so do not over torque this. Be sure that you put the threads in by hand. You do not want to crank down on this. These oil pans aren't cheap. They're very easy to strip out. Be careful also, this is going to be hot if the car's been running, so be careful with that. And we're going to let this drain out. Always remember to dispose of your oil in a responsible manner. Most auto parts stores will take it, so gather that up, put it in a couple of milk jugs, and get it back to the auto parts store, or call your local fire department or emergency management for drop-off locations. Don't pour this down the drain. Don't be that guy, okay? We're going to go ahead and let that drain. Okay, as it goes to a trickle here, we're going to go ahead and put the plug back in. You want to make sure that the you replace the washer if needed. This one is actually okay, so we're just going to put it back in. And when we retorque it, again, you just want to get it good and tight. You don't want to over torque it. Just a good little pull, and that's all you need. All that's going to stay put. And also, we want to clean off this area and make sure it doesn't have a drip. After we get this clean, we're going to put it back on our belly pan, and I'll meet you on the other side. Okay, so I have my filter here, and I went ahead and put the new gasket on here and take some oil and just lubricate that. And then we're going to slide this in here, this press down until you hear that click. And you want to take your hands, if they've got oil on them, just slide that around there and make sure that you've got that lubricated. And I'm putting this in with my hands first. So I want to make sure that it doesn't cross thread. And then torque spec is about 5 Newton meters, which is, I don't even think I have a torque wrench that measures that low. So just till you get to the end, and then just a little bump with the ratchet, and that's all you need. So now, filling it up, these have an absurdly small little hole that we have to put that in. So let me go get my funnel. Okay, so we definitely need to make sure that we have a funnel when we're filling this up. Let me turn this up so you can see. And we're going to go ahead and pour in the oil. The cool thing about these is they come with their own funnel. So if you need to, on the side of the road, you can pull that out there. This comes off, pull the grenade pin, and we are good to go. So go ahead, and I normally pour the big one first, and you're gonna have to pour about 3/4 of the other one in there, and that's gonna give us the correct oil. Okay, so what we want to do with this last small bottle is we want to pour about half of it in here. And then we want to crank up the vehicle and make sure the oil gets everywhere it's supposed to go, gets in the filter housing before we check the oil, okay? So let me go ahead and zip this back together, and then we'll crank it up. All right, so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and crank the vehicle up and make sure that the oil is getting everywhere it's supposed to go, all the way through the galleys, and then we're going to wait about 30 seconds to check the oil. And what that does is that gives the oil time to get back down to the pan and level out so we can check it. You also want to make sure that you're doing this on a level ground. So if you have this on ramps or something like that, go ahead and lower it off the ramps or jack stands or whatever. You want this to be level when we're checking the oil. Okay, so we just pull the dipstick here. I'm going to go ahead and give it the old wipe down. Put it straight down. Make sure it's seated all the way down to the bottom. Wait till it clicks. Pull it back up. Then we'll be able to tell. See, right now we're at the very, let's see if I can get it to focus. We're at the very bottom of the operating range, so we're gonna have to put in that other little bit of oil, and that'll get us probably up to the top. Okay, so that does it today for our video on oil change on the Volkswagen Atlas with the 2-liter engine. So give me a like on this video if it taught you anything, and also subscribe to the channel for the best in European automotive repair with Mr. B. So I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if you're in Europe, I'm on VK. And I always put my content on those 4 sites, so look me up there. Also, let me know in the comments, how did you like this video? Did it help you change the oil in your Volkswagen Atlas? Also, how are you liking your Atlas? I don't know many Atlas customers, so I'm trying to get to know a few, and this is a friend of mine's car, so he's loving the Atlas, but I want to see what you think about it as well. So give me a comment down the bottom, let me know what you think, and thank you as always for watching